A week or so ago, Heiner and I launched the EGON DC-Hub, and the comments have been very, very interesting and very, very useful to us. So thank you for that. But a lot of people, not a high percentage, probably 10%, have been saying, I don't get it. And that may very well be because I didn't explain it very well. And people have been saying, most of those people have been saying, it's just a fuse box. Well, sure, it's just a fuse box. Well, what do you mean by just? Just another fuse box? No. There is no fuse box on the planet like this. And we've had probably 6 or 7 specific products suggested that we should go and look at them. Is it like this? Suggestions in the comment section. And we have been to every single one. And no, this is not like anything else. Also, a lot of people have said, again, not a lot, enough to mention it, why don't you add relays and things? Well, that's not a bad idea, but those products with relays and switching capabilities already exist. And the one that I am familiar with, Heiner's very familiar with, is the Redarc Redvision. So I thought I'd put this video together so you can understand, and I put the DC-Hub up against the Redvision unit, because the Redvision unit in some ways does the same thing, but in other ways doesn't do the same thing. But I thought a direct comparison between the two. Now, this is not a selling job. This is not for an EGON DC-Hub promotion. We both think that the Redarc Redvision system is a very good system, very robust. We've both used it. He fits it into clients' vehicles. I had it in my camper, and it's a good system. But it does a different job to the DC-Hub. Hello everybody, you know Heiner Kleiman.
Hello.
And we're going to help those people, and there were many of them, that had commented on the EGON DC-Hub video, which of course was a video about this product that we developed together. And there was a little bit of confusion, and a lot of people rightly said, well, what's the difference between that and the Redvision system? I thought that was a good question. And also quite a few people saying, oh, that's just a fancy fuse box.
Yeah.
And well, actually it is a fancy fuse box. But what
very
is it?
Fancy.
Very fancy. So you have to say, okay, well, if it's a fancy fuse box, which I'm not kind of denying that it is, what's fancy about it? But I think that the viewers deserve to know what's the difference between this and a product that is well known and well liked and well respected called the Redarc Redvision.
Okay, I think that is a point we definitely have to clarify, because it's not that easy to understand without having the background knowledge what these two systems actually do.
Yes.
And later on we should also explain what the difference is between that and a fuse box. If we get there.
Well, that's what we're going to do.
I think, yeah, that should be a good idea.
Okay, so those of you who are interested in this then stick around, and that's what we're going to do now. Right.
All right, so the main difference in between the EGON DC-Hub and the Redarc TVMS, or Redvision System, Total Vehicle Management System, as Redarc calls it, is that this is able to switch its outputs on and off. This here isn't. This is power distribution. This is power distribution with switching. It also integrates extra features like you can monitor water levels, you can monitor temperatures, you can, if you also buy a Redarc inverter, you can, through the display that Redarc delivers with its product, turn the Redarc inverter on and off. And the
that
other
sounds
difference
a lot
is,
better than this. So far.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is also a lot more expensive because there's a lot more technology in it.
But there's a lot more that this can do.
That's right.
That can't do.
See, this is mainly for switching small loads. So this is a fancy way of switching your loads on and off.
Loads like fridge.
Fridge.
Oven, travel oven.
Travel oven, lights as such, all that sort of stuff. But this is limited to a maximum of 80 amps. You cannot put more than 80 amps through it. It's got a fuse in here. If you draw more than 80 amps through this unit, the fuse will break. It's also only got 5 10 amp outlets and it's got 5 30 amp outlets, all with standard blade fuses. And this is where the difference to this comes, I think, where the DC-Hub shines a lot more, because you can put 150 amp through the DC-Hub. So if you, for example, try to hook up an ARB twin piston compressor to this, there's no way, because you're limited to 30 amp outputs.
How many 30 amp outputs?
5 30 amp outputs and 5 10 amp outputs. That's all the loads you can put on here. So on this, we have got 10 25 amp outputs, then we've got 2 50 amp outputs, and we got 1 80 amp output. So in terms of, you really want to put everything together. Also, let's say an Anderson plug that you want to use to the full capacity of 50 amp, your ARB compressor or a 375 watt inverter from Victron, for example, needs to be fused with 80 amps. All of that can be wired through this one unit, and you don't need extra power distribution. Well, if you would do that with this unit, you can switch your lights, you can switch your fridge, you can also switch your travel buddy. That is still within reason, but there's no way you can actually have 50 amp going through one of these outputs, even left alone an ARB compressor, which will draw close to 70 amps. Well, with this you can. So if you install this, you can wire all your lights to it, you can wire your charger to it, partially. But everything else, you need extra fuses. Let's say you need an extra MIDI fuse for the compressor, you need an extra MIDI fuse for a 50 amp outlet, so means you have to do a lot more to actually make the power distribution yourself. Well, this has got all the power distribution on board already. All you need to do is 2 cables from the battery in here, and then just twin core cables to the rest of the unit, and you're basically done.
So the beauty of this is simplicity. We've said that many times, that it all comes into one place. A question, in this system, Redarc system, where would you run the DC to DC charger to? All
right, well, the way it works is, and we can show that a lot of people would buy the system with the manager. So the manager has got 4 cables going to it. You would use the 2 output cables to actually go to the charger, positive and negative. And that way, it charges through the unit to your battery.
So this does still take inputs from DC chargers?
It does take inputs from a DC charger.
Does it take inputs from solar charging?
No. The solar charging input needs to go directly to the manager.
So the DC
charger. The start
charger.
Battery needs to go directly to the DC charger as well.
So you're saying that with this you can wire in solar separately or via the DC to DC charger that you happen to have connected? Both. With this?
With this you can, everything goes directly to the unit. This here, you have to segregate. Some goes to this unit, some goes directly to the charger. That's where a bit of the simplicity of this comes in as well, because if you want to wire this up with a manager or DC-DC charger, these 4 cables that you can see here connect directly to these 4 connectors on the circuit board. You don't have to go anywhere else. You don't have to know what you're doing as long as you can read what's going where. And then you put your start battery to this connector and you put solar to this connector. You don't have to have any distribution for grounds or anything, while here you still have to make sure you put all the grounds to a bus bar somewhere, because all the grounds have to be linked together. While on here all the grounds are automatically linked together because the bus bar is built into this unit, which saves a lot of time.
That was a question that I had as well. Some chaps have been putting this into their boats. And of course, there's no negative ground.
That's right.
And the question was, well, do I have to have a separate bus bar?
No, it's all built in there.
The bar is built in. Everything runs positive and negative.
That's another difference to this here. For some setups, you will have to use bus bars, because when you, for example, connect your solar panel up to the manager, the ground of the solar panel has to be linked somewhere as well. And there's no input for that anywhere. So what you would usually need to do is either make sure you got a junction stud somewhere where the ground goes to the unit and everything else goes to the junction stud, or you have to solder the cables together. It's not as straightforward. You have to know what you're doing. While here, you just take the two cables
Yes.
from the solar panel
Yes.
and just put them both in there. Just make sure you read positive and negative right. You do the same with your start battery.
Okay.
And then you just connect the DC-DC charger. And as soon as you put the secondary battery to that, it's all connected the way it should be connected.
Okay.
You don't have to do anything else.
I have a question. Again, we've talked about simplicity because that's why we designed it and that's how we developed it, because we wanted to keep things simple. But
Yeah.
now in the real world, okay,
Yeah.
somebody who's had some experience with DC wiring and they know what they're doing and they know the basics, do you
Yeah.
think somebody like that are going to be able to do a wiring with the Redarc Vision, including adding a separate charger with it? Do you think it's within their capability, or...
Now this, you have to know what you're doing. Also, even if you get the wiring sorted, programming the unit is another thing where you really have to know what you're doing. I think it's very technical for somebody who's got a background and knows a bit about information technology, computers and stuff like that. It's probably relatively straightforward.
Okay.
They will go like, all right, this means something to me. Somebody who's more mechanically minded and doesn't really handle electric things that often, he will look into the configuration of this and go, what's this? Where am I? What am I doing here? Because to me, it's very clear. You can just say, like, when this input switch is on, then switch input 2 and 3 on automatically. And then when that turns off, turn that off. And you can all program that in there, which is brilliant. Electronics engineers love stuff like that. I think this is a great product. But I think for the average person, it's not that easy to understand. You have to read into it to understand what's going on. Another thing with this is, there's which I find a bit of a hindrance sometimes, is there's no physical switch anywhere. And a lot of people like switches to be a switch there for that light, a switch there, a
Yes.
switch there. Well, with this, you can, if you want to, just turn outputs on permanently and then add a switch somewhere else, and also use the panel that you've got to
Yes.
turn outputs on and off. But
Yes.
there's a lot of premium that you pay for having a panel somewhere to turn things
Yes.
on and off, when all you want is just an old standard
Yes.
switch and a very simple installation, I think.
But you do know that you and I will be called, and I have been called this, I've been called a dinosaur. Because I don't have a problem with the switch.
Yeah.
I just don't have a problem with the switch.
Yeah.
And for that I've been called a dinosaur. So this is for the dinosaurs.
Not necessarily. I think it
I don't
depends
think
on
it is either.
which way you look at switching things. So I find it very unpractical to have a single spot where you turn things on and off.
Turn everything on and off.
Everything on
You
and
want
off.
to turn on
It's
something.
only a single spot. So whenever I want to turn the light on, I have to go to the same spot. Yes, you can use the app, but after you've done that a few times and you had to restart Bluetooth, and it gets old, and I don't want to look at my phone all the time when I'm camping. There's people out there that look at that differently,
Yes.
obviously, and that's, everybody to their own liking.
Yes.
Me personally, I'm not a big fan of that.
No.
I like to get away from my phone.
Yes.
And I find it handy to have a switch where I need a switch. I might need switches for some things in here, while I might want other switches on the other side of the vehicle or in the cab. And yes, you can put multiple screens in the car, but it adds to the cost quite quickly. It's even less straightforward to set up. And I think this product, whenever I would do a fit out for, let's say, a caravan or big motorhome or something like that, I think this is brilliant. I would probably use something like that for it, because that is a caravan, motorhome, maybe even a big boat thing where this has got its spot. It's brilliant for that, because usually big caravans have got that one control panel. You got multiple water tanks.
It measures water levels and other little things like that.
And the DC-Hub can't do that. There's no smarts in the DC-Hub.
Yeah.
So this, for a motorhome, is probably ideal. But as soon as you go to smaller setups, that you want more rigid, easier in a certain way, where you want switches, normal mechanical, old analog dinosaur switches to turn on a light. I think I would always go for that. And obviously I'm biased because we made this thing.
We are biased. We're biased. We're trying our best not to be biased here.
But we also try to make a product to the best of our knowledge to actually cater for a market that wants a really solid solution for top power distribution and fusing.
Yes, and it's a solution product. It's a problem-solving product.
Yeah.
So I have one other question. At what point does somebody who's doing their own build, because this is definitely designed for anybody to use, okay, doing their own build, where they're going to say, you know, I'm not going to go with the Blue Sea fuse boxes, which is one of the nicest fuse boxes you can get.
Yeah,
I think.
absolutely.
I'm not going to go with the Blue Sea on this particular build. I'm going to go with the EGON DC-Hub because at what point is this going to be more cost effective for them? We know it's going to save them time. No matter what they do, it's going to save them time. But more cost effective. At what point do they say no to the Blue Sea? I want to spend a bit more money on the fuse box because I want the fuse box to do more.
Yeah.
And go this route. Where is that point?
It is hard to say because obviously it's a fine line and everybody draws that at a different spot. You get a lot neater installation with that because you do not have to have all these interconnections in between the start battery, the solar panel, the DC-DC charger. Usually you have to allow fuses, junction points, solder points, whatever you do, this stuff has to go somewhere. And you can make that very neat. We used to build electric systems all the time without the DC-Hub, before the DC-Hub. But A, you need more space for it. And B, no matter how much you try, it's going to be more of a mess. So it is very hard to answer that question because it depends on so many factors. Also, how high do you value your time? And another thing is fault finding. How easy do you want the fault finding to be? One thing that always annoyed me when I soldered DC-DC chargers in and hardwired them is when something doesn't work, you can't probe cables. You can't go, I'm going to measure the voltage on that cable because it is soldered and heat shrunk. So whatever you do, you have to take insulation off. Once you take insulation off, you can't put a heat shrink back on because you have to cut it and resolder it. So you have to tape it and put a cable tie around it, which is not nice. With this, if you want to measure what is going on, you can just go to the top of the screw connectors and you know exactly what's going on in this circuit. So if you want to do fault finding in your installation, you just go here. You clip to ground on one side and then you just probe there, and you know exactly what's going on. Fault finding is a breeze with that. For me, that's brilliant because I know fault finding can be terrible in a system that is scattered all over a vehicle and you have to search first where you go and to actually find components. I would say people who build a setup that they want to keep for a while and it's more than just a light, a fridge and a USB charger for a telephone, they probably gonna love this product because it's so easy to add on later on. If you want to add more lights, another fridge,
add solar,
this and that, add solar.
Chargers, short
it
power.
Is so easy. Even if you go, I'm going to get rid of the charger that I'm using right now and I'm going to upgrade to the next charger. You can just unscrew your charger and put another one in. Screw it back in, mount it. It's simple and neat as well. You don't have to cut anything apart and resolder and reheat shrink, have to cut a harness apart. In doing so, I know it always looks terrible after. You designed it perfectly the first time, you have to change something and you don't really ruin it, but it's never going to be as nice again.
It's never the same. And you know, we like to add things.
Yes,
so
always.
A year down the line you say, well, I think I'm going to get the X, Y, and Z, and you can just run a cable and you can keep it neat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, you can do that with the Blue Sea fuse box as well. With the Blue Sea fuse box, you can also add things on.
Yeah.
No doubt about that. But there is no interconnections on the Blue Sea fuse box where you can hook in a DC-DC charger, where you hook in your solar, where you hook in your start battery. All of this you have to do separate away from the Blue Sea fuse box. There's also other products. There was some feedback that we were getting through the email channels about products that are sort of similar, like the DC-Hub. There are also circuit boards, and there's switching on there, there's relays, there's fuses on there. They look very similar, but they are also just a fuse box with integrated switching. There is no interconnections, there is no power distribution involved in those circuit boards.
Right.
So I think when you said that that is a unique product, it still stands. Because I have not found anything, unless if anybody knows, we don't know to our best
How many
knowledge.
have we looked? I mean, I must have looked at about 5 people saying, oh, it's just like this,
Yeah.
or how different is it from that? There was one that was used on motorbikes, I remember, it looked quite compact, but again, that was a small switching device.
Yeah.
So we haven't found anything like it.
And I mean, I have done a lot of research before we developed this, because I just wanted to find a product. I didn't want to make a product. This didn't start with me going, I'm going to make a product.
Yes.
This was like, this is what we want. So we did a lot of research and went, this is what we want to buy. Where can we buy it?
We
And there was nothing.
We found
And there was
nothing. We
nothing.
found absolutely nothing.
And that's when we're like, well, we probably have to make it ourselves if we
Yeah.
want
Which
something
is
like
exactly
this.
what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So that's basically it.
Yeah?
Hopefully that helps you understand a little bit more about what we've tried to achieve here. Well, we
Yeah.
have achieved it, and we're pretty proud of it.
Yeah.
And so,
I think, do we want to do a in a nutshell thing? What basically in a
we
nutshell?
could bore them more.
Yeah?
We could. I don't think we should.
Okay. We'll
Watch
just
the
leave
video
it at that.
again.
Yeah.
Thank you, Heiner. It's
No
very
worries.
great. Very great. Oh, you know something? This system here that Heiner's put in his vehicle is actually a combination of both. He's not used the Redvision system, but he has used the control. This is the charger.
That is the Manager 30,
That's the
yeah?
Manager 30, which takes in, it's a DC to DC charger, 30 amp DC to DC charger, which
is.
takes AC in.
Yeah, also takes
and-
solar.
And it takes solar in.
Yeah.
So
And the
you-
beauty is it comes with the Redvision display, which I think is a great display.
So the best combination of the two actually is what you've done here.
I think so. That's
You've
why I
done
put
your
it in
power
here.
distribution here.
Yeah.
You've put your charging here, but you still have control. You don't have.
But I don't
you
control
don't
anything
have
with it.
switching.
Yes,
but
that's
you have
right.
monitoring.
That's right. I've got monitoring.
Pretty nice.
I've got my monitor to actually monitor my system.
Which is
I've got my
nice.
switches to switch things on and off, which I
is
like.
which is actually a good way of combining the two products
I
in
think
a way.
so as well. And all you need to do to combine it is these 4 connectors, which are ground, secondary battery output, solar in, and start battery in. You wire them directly to these 4 connectors.
Those connectors up there.
Up there, your start battery in there, your solar in there, and then you can see, I call this the primary power distribution. Big fuse to the input for the secondary battery, and you're done. All your power distribution that you need, all your interconnections, start battery, solar, DC-DC charger, all done.
Yeah.
Takes minutes to do.
Yeah.
You just run the cable
And here you've got your 12 volt input, which goes directly to there. You've got your solar input, which goes directly to there.
Yeah.
No other cables. You've just got a cable running directly from there.
That's
to
it, exactly there.
Straight
And
to
also
there.
another cable in parallel to that going to the roof solar
Yes,
panel.
yes.
This is a proper
So-
50 amp outlet.
Yeah.
And I've also got an ARB twin piston compressor, which is wired directly through
the
that.
80.
So I haven't got any other fuses for my secondary battery system except for the 2 main fuses, one for the DC-Hub, one for the inverter, and the rest is all on the circuit board. And then I've added a switching system that we're probably going to introduce in the future at some stage, which is in here as a prototype, but
Yeah, we're not going to say anything about that
no,
now.
not yet.
So the idea was that, yes, switching is nice, but how can we make it simple,
Yeah, very simple.
redundant?
Yeah,
It must have built-in redundancy,
yeah,
and it must be able to switch remote also.
yes. But we didn't want that to be integrated into the DC-Hub
No.
because the DC-Hub can be a standalone thing. If you don't want switching, you don't have to go for switching. But if you want to, it will be an add-on, another thing that you can quite easily connect to it, and it will just integrate like that.
End of the year, folks. End of 2021, not before.
I don't think before that. We want to test it properly as well.
We have to test it until it breaks. And we haven't actually even finalized the design. But anyway, that's what we do. That's what we do in our spare time. We play with kit like this.
Yeah.
And so, okay, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you everybody for watching.
Cool. Thank you.
See you next time.